following is a presentation of Main Street Media, your source for news, sports, and information on Main Street in Middle Tennessee. Welcome into Main Street Preps this week with Russell Vannozzi and Tyler Palmatier as they bring you the latest headlines and storylines across Middle Tennessee. It's Main Street Preps this week. Here are your hosts, Tyler Palmatier and Russell Vannozzi.
We're back with another edition of Main Street Preps this week. I'm Russell Vannozzi, joined as always by Tyler Palmatier. Almost butchered your name there, Tyler. But we've got a fun show lined up, and we're going to talk about some of the biggest high school sports headlines across the region. We're going to welcome CPA soccer coach Thomas Gerlach for a conversation. And finally, we'll wrap up with some of the big news that came out from the TSSAA last week. Tyler, basketball season is in the rear view here. We've got spring sports going on, and there has certainly been no shortage of news and things to keep up with, has there?
Yeah, I mean, it's really there's the biggest news, the TSSAA Executive Director move. I think a few people probably had an inkling that it was going to come in the days before, but I mean, last month while we were at basketball, Bernard Childress retiring at the end of the year was not on my brain. That's a big story. I thought he did that job so well in the short time that I kind of covered the organization and the meetings since I've been here. So that's just, that's a huge story. And it's not like it's a huge story because we don't know who's going to fill the spot or we're worried about the person that's going to fill the spot. I think Mark Reeves is an awesome pick, but it's just a big job, as you know, Russell. And when somebody, I think they want something seamless, but they've got a new person now. So there could be changes.
And that all came just a day after the organization decided to kind of kick the ball down on lacrosse sanctioning. Kick the can, I should say, to December to think about that some more. You were there for that meeting. And then speaking of sports potentially getting sanctioned, girls flag football is well underway in Williamson County. That's another one that could be on the table soon as well, depending on how things shake out. Yeah,
and indoor track, I think, is the other one. We're probably just going into an era here of a few sports that are going to need some form of sanctioning. And there's some different ways you can do that. Just because you're sanctioned doesn't mean, okay, you're sanctioned and we will offer a state championship trophy and a state championship for you. You can ease sports in. Sports can hold a regional championship at first, and as they kind of await full sanctioning from the TSSAA, and then the state championship can be added afterwards. Sometimes it's just a matter of, getting the catastrophic insurance for a sport that needs it, getting access to those bylaws that the TSSA has, just that added structure is really what helps sports. The state championship and state tournaments that you can offer can come later, but just getting like flag football and not indoor, but lacrosse and indoor sanctioned initially, I think is going to be a big thing in the next 3 years. And that's kind of what was discussed at that meeting last week, where that's going. And that seems pretty clear that's kind of where we're headed there. So that'll be something to follow for a while, I would imagine.
Certainly. And of course, to get sanctioned, you've got to have some level of access across the state for every sport that is sanctioned. So that's, I'm sure, a big topic of discussion on how they're going to do that. But, Williamson County is trying out this flag football experiment, Tyler. It seems like from all accounts, it's going pretty well so far. And just taking a look at the standings, Franklin has been dominant. They're 6-0, and then right behind them are Fairview and Ravenwood at both 5-1. But more so than the records, I know you talked to some of the coaches to check in last week, and it seems like everybody's having fun and kind of just enjoying learning the fundamentals and coaching the fundamentals of football. And by all accounts, seems like that's been kind of a smashing success so far and something that we could see pop up in other counties in the coming years.
I absolutely think we will. I think seems to be a great offense or off-season sport for soccer players, and frankly anything. But I mean, it's kind of perfect for soccer for girls in Tennessee because they play in the fall and a great way to play. There's a way to condition yourself, and then kind of before that travel season starts. But yeah, I've heard nothing but good things about it. Franklin's I didn't realize they were all the way up in first place now, but they're running the option. I mean, they're throwing it way back. So it's pretty cool. I think how teams have approached it, and definitely learning experience because it's a different sport for sure.
And on top of all that, we kind of have this kind of late push of college commitments flying off the board, especially for seniors. A couple of the big names, Willie Walton from Lipscomb Academy is heading to Lee University to play basketball and baseball, which is pretty neat. And then Ryan Oliver is another one that stood out. Of course, Caneridge's kind of right-hand man there to Brandon Miller. He's going to, don't want to butcher the name here, I think it's Vincennes University in Indiana. Could be how you say it, might not be how you say it, but that's the best I can do. And looking into that school a little bit, it's a 2-year school, a 2-year athletic program, at least. I think they do offer some 4-year degrees, but several NBA players actually started their careers there, including Sean Mannion, Carl Landry. There's actually a guy right now in the NBA, I think with the Miami Heat, that went there. So certainly not a bad landing spot there for Oliver. Maybe he can use a couple of good seasons there and springboard that into maybe a 4-year school or maybe a Division I school if he develops.
Yeah,
the player that seems like he could be.
That's awesome. Did you say Sean Marion went there?
Yeah, he went there, and then he went there directly from Clarksville, and then he went to UNLV before getting drafted. Oh,
okay.
So
that's a great spot. Yeah, I wasn't surprised that he found a spot to play, Ryan Oliver. And then of course Jake Dykstra going to Belmont. That announcement was pretty big yesterday too. That's good for him. I only watched CPA twice this year, but Jake Dykstra played great both times I saw him.
Yeah, and he was 2 years ago. He was just a fantastic shooter too. I think he may have been a little bit down this year, but I think 2 years ago he was like 45% from three or something crazy like that when Drew Maddox was still the coach there. So that was pretty crazy. And then also Nathan Robertson from Greenbrier, defensive end, heading to Tennessee. I got to see him a couple years ago at a practice. It was one of those workouts that they were doing in the summer right after things started kind of opening up after COVID, and was taking some pictures out of practice. I was like, man, that kid looks like he's got some size and ability. Had no idea he would eventually turn into an SEC prospect. So for Greenbrier, it's a pretty neat thing there.
Yeah, it's awesome. That's great.
And with that, we are going to move to our first break and then come back with CPA soccer coach Thomas Gerlach.
Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint treats your orthopedic injuries and existing conditions. Our trained physicians will get you back in the game faster. Contact us at 931-381-2663 or www.mtbj.net. Hey folks, while we take a quick break from the show, I want to tell you about our friends over at Custom Stone Handlers in downtown Columbia. Ed Rich and his team at Custom Stone Handlers believe in leadership. And outside of the military, our greatest leader building platform is sports. Custom Stone Handlers proudly encourages young people to get in the game. You can contact them today at 931-490-4990 or visit CustomStonehandlers.com.
Jones & Lang Sporting Goods here in Columbia has been outfitting teams, officials, and anybody else from T-ball to college for 50-plus years. Be sure and check them out at 931-388-8060 or online at jonesandlang.com. Jones & Lang Sporting Goods, the look of a winner.
Zion Christian Academy, ZionEagles.org or 931-388-5731. You can schedule your appointment. Go tour their campus. It is beautiful over there, and you're definitely going to want to see it. Again, it's ZionEagles.org. Give them a call, 931-388-5731, and schedule your tour today.
Are you an enthusiastic sports fan? Want to have fun and get in on the action?
Heck, yes. That'd be awesome.
Have great attention to detail? Want to stay active?
Definitely.
Want to give back to the student athletes in your community?
Obviously, yes.
Then you'd make an excellent high school sports official. We need more officials in Tennessee, because with no high school officials, there are no high school sports. Sign up today at highschoolofficials.com.
Mid-Tennessee Bone & Joint has been the official sports medicine provider for Maury County Schools for more than 40 years. We specialize in orthopedic injuries, and our Ortho Quick walk-in service lets you bypass the ER. Visit us online at www.mtbj.net.
Nobody covers high school sports like Main Street Preps, bringing you hyper-local coverage of the teams and athletes in your backyard. Wherever your Main Street is, we've got a podcast for you. From Sumner County Sports Podcast with Zach Womble, Casey's Take on Sports with Dixon Post and Cheatham County Exchange's sports reporter Case Patrick, the MSP North Podcast with Brady McAtamney and Blaine Keller covering Montgomery and Robertson counties, to Main Street Preps This Week with Russell Venozzi and Tyler Palmatier with a macro view of prep sports in Middle Tennessee. Find the latest prep sports news from your Main Street at mainstreetpreps.com and find these podcasts dropping weekly on these Main Street media social platforms and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to Tyler and Russell with Main Street Preps This Week.
All righty, it's time to welcome in CPA soccer coach Thomas Gerlach, also known as Tom, I think. Tom, how you doing today?
Yeah, I'm doing well, sir. Good. Thanks for having me on here.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us. And, Tom, looking outside, it almost feels like we live in Seattle or something this week with all the rain. I know you guys still have grass, natural grass over there at CPA. How do you handle it when it rains? Do you guys go ahead and practice on your game field? Do you go inside? Do you just cancel? What's kind of the plan been this week?
So we try not to cancel just because, we really want to get touches on the ball. It's limiting, though, as we're blessed to have a lot of great sports here at CPA, but we have two gyms. And so, in the spring, you've got girls softball, you got baseball, you got girls lacrosse, you got guys lacrosse, you have track and field, and then you have soccer. So, when it rains, it's kind of a balance issue of when you can get to the gym and for how long. So, if we have a big game coming up and it's not torrentially raining, we might train outside on the field, but we don't want to tear up the boxes. So we'll get maybe an hour of technical work in the gym and then sometimes maybe look at game film or end a little early. But, this weather has been crazy. It's been, snowing one day and 80 the next and then raining the next day and sunny by evening. So I've always joked that I should coach an indoor sport. All I do is stay on Doppler radar for the entire day looking at what the weather's going to do.
That is so true. It's funny how sports writers kind of become amateur meteorologists in that regard too, Tom. Whenever the rain starts to come out, we all like to pretend we know exactly what all these storm systems are going to do and which way they're going to move. You reached 300 wins a few years ago. You were hired at CPA back in 2014. Does it seem like you've been at this coaching thing this long? And as well as kind of, how does it feel like you've been at CPA that long? I know that that was a job you were fond of for a long time.
Yeah, absolutely. I started coaching in 2003, and I think I added up between girls and guys seasons and coaching around. I've coached 34 seasons, so I feel really old. And I've actually, while I coached at CAK for 8 years, I actually have now kind of gone above what I did at CAK because coaching girls and guys, I've coached here now since 2014. So while it seems just like yesterday that I was at CAK, it also seems like I've been here for a while because, what a phenomenal program both of those programs are, and just to be a part of CPA is a blessing. And Brett Armstrong and Tom Gilman, the predecessors here, have laid such a great foundation. And our administration is so supportive. So it's a great place to work, even though, as you guys know, coaching is hard no matter where you are.
Yeah, and despite that, you guys have been able to be competitive on both the girls and boys sides. Seems like every season there at CPA, and of course this year you're now in Division II AA. So, did you feel like your programs were ready for that challenge this season, Tom?
So I use the story a lot of, back a couple of years when UCF beat Auburn and they were claiming they were national champions. And, someone said, it's different when you can beat Auburn, but playing in the SEC day in, day out makes it a lot different. And I felt like going into this, we were kind of the UCF of sports where, we would still play NBA, we would still play BA, we'd play Macaulay, and we would play these games to I like to play the best teams that I can because I think it prepares you. However, there is no easy game now in D2AA. When you're looking at, depending on the rankings, you're looking at, Macaulay is always up there, Baylor, Christian Brothers. With the girls, you've got Harbaugh, who won state. So it's day in, day out. You're playing the best teams. But, our staff and our guys and girls have prepped and done such a great job setting the tone of what this program looks like. Even 3 or 4 years ago, knowing that this might be a possibility that they move us up. It's hard, but I do love the competition because every game means something now. Whereas before it might, a couple of those games might have been a blowout. Now it's, you're battling it out with NBA, battling it out with Father Ryan, who are very storied and successful programs.
Well, Tom, I'm glad you brought that up. I was going to ask you about this stretch you guys have coming up between April 19th and the 25th. You've got Father Ryan, Pope Prep, and Innsworth. How important do you look at those? How important are those stretches to you as a coach, as we're close to the playoffs, but these games are important? They obviously don't define your season, but how do you treat them? How do you kind of want to gauge your team during those late season stretches?
Sure. So, it's changed with D2AA. In our single A, pretty much everyone qualified for the postseason and everyone had a chance to move on to region and sub-state to state. But now with D2AA, you have to be in the top 4 to even qualify for postseason. So, if we're not in the top 4 out of our 7 teams, your season's done the last game you play. And so, we front-loaded some really heavy opponents: Station Camp, Hendersonville, Page. These NBA, these teams that were really going to prepare us because, we really need to get some points on the next kind of region games to even have a postseason. So, while, yes, 100%, these games don't define us, our guys are one of those things where, we're a both and. We want to find our identity in Christ, but we don't want to find our identity in our wins and losses, but we're also competitors. Like, we want to compete till the very end. And so we're going to go into it, looking to get, 3 points from every game, or at least a point from every game. But all of those games are tough, man. Father Ryan and Robin has done such a great job there, and JP2 and Innsworth, they're all storied programs. So, we got to go in with the mindset of we got to give it our best because it's going to be a battle.
And I know you guys have a number of talented players, but what Jace Harvey did last year as a freshman just kind of knocked everybody's socks off with the 26 goals, the hat trick in the state semifinals. Has he taken another step forward this year from what you've seen?
Yeah, Jace is phenomenal. And when you have Jace Harvey and Patty Lee, and, Patty already has 9 goals so far this season, or excuse me, 17 goals so far this season. Put him and Jace together. We actually call them the Wandering Sprinkles. I know that's not really a technical term, but, we have some players where, you're a left wing, you're a right wing, you're a 6, or you're a defensive center mid. For Jace and Patty, it's kind of one of those situations where they're so intelligent and they're so in tune with the game. They can wander wherever they feel the game leads them to go, and they can adjust. And so, we have another newcomer, Asher Keck, son of Danny Keck, here at CPA. He's a forward who he does things athletically that is just incredible. He scored a banger of a goal against Franklin. I don't know if you saw it on social media. He's a right footer from almost the baseline. And so you put those 3 together and, chaos happens. And so it is such a blessing to have them with, Davis Rohde, who's a junior captain. And that's rare in and of itself to have a captain on such a strong team that's a junior, along with Patty Lee. It really builds that up and sets us up for success from an attacking standpoint.
Tom, we're gonna get you out of here pretty quick. Last thing, who's the best player you've seen from an opposing team this year, and why?
Wow, that's a tough question because there's a lot of good players. I'll tell you who I was really impressed with was Hendersonville's center midfield. They are just phenomenal. You know, the things that Hendersonville did, they ran a 3-5-2, and they were all over us that first half. It's the control, it's the movement of the ball. It's not only aggression, but it's aggression with control. They're confident, they can attack and move the ball. And so those players are just, I think nothing but the best of Hendersonville, and there's a reason why they're ranked, in the top 5 in the state.
Sounds like that was certainly a good non-region challenge to stick in the schedule there, Tom. And we really appreciate your time today, and we hope to see you out of the game soon. And best of luck to you guys.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Best of luck.
Absolutely. That's
Thanks,
been
Tom.
CPA boys and girls soccer coach Tom Gerlach. And it's now time for another commercial break.
Nobody does what Tennessee's doing. It is incredibly hard to perform at that level, much less replacing the players Tennessee replaced. I think everything pointed to, if you know the way the league usually works, you can kind of guess that to say, well, they were this last year, they lost that, they gained that. You can usually peg them in a range where you're pretty sure that's going to fit at the end of the year. What they have done is mind-blowing, and I've never seen a team doing what they're doing right now. I have seen some of Tim's teams do this before, where you get to the midseason point, you just don't know where this team is going. You're not even sure if it's good or great. You don't know what it is. And at the end of the season, he's pushed all the buttons. And they've won a national title or something like that. We've seen that happen before. I don't know. And the thing is that makes it so tough is I don't understand their offense right now, Mo. I don't get, you watch them 3 weeks ago, they're coming off, they're on an 18-game winning streak, and number 18 was 10-0 over South Carolina in its building on Friday night.
You can tell the angst is through the roof with league executive coaches. I mean, first of all, I cannot relate, but everyone is on the edge of their seat just trying to get ready for this game coming up against the unknowns. I think we as a people give ourselves too much credit. Listen, my dad is probably the worst driver on the planet, right? So when they come out with self-driving cars one day, he's going to buy one. And there's that mindset, right? Everyone's like, I would never have a car drive for me. What if it malfunctions? It's like I drive in Nashville traffic every single day for like 3 hours. I see how terrible human drivers are. I think people give themselves too much credit. So they're like, oh, the ball and the chip will mess up. No, it won't. And if it does, it'll be like a one-time thing and it'll be fixable.
As we bring in the voice of the Blue Raiders, Chip Walters, who sits in our studio today. And that was awesome. I hope you will clip that out.
Hope you heard that.
Moving right along here on Main Street Preps this week, it's time to take a little bit of a deeper dive into that big TSSAA news that we briefly mentioned there at the top. Of course, Bernard Childress announced his retirement last week and almost immediately was replaced by Mark Reeves. Tyler, I'll be honest, I had my finger on the trigger there to send the Bernard Childress story to get that out, and then I was listening to the Board of Control call, and one thing led to another, and all of a sudden they are voting on a new executive director. So I think that I don't know if that was exactly planned ahead of time, but it certainly speaks to how everybody feels about Mark in that office and on that board, that it was kind of a no-brainer to just go ahead and insert him as Bernard's replacement.
Yeah, I would say is probably more than likely planned before. I mean, especially with Bernard stepping down to retire, I feel like they probably had a little bit of heads up that this was going to happen. And I think Mark seems like the good choice. I mean, I don't know, easy. I thought that he would be the perfect replacement and that he would be the likely replacement. But I don't think they just put him in there. I don't think that was a quick vote. I think that was definitely a vote that was planned. I mean, I think that was something that was thought about before to put him in that spot. They were a pretty deliberate bunch over there. So I think they were that was a really intentioned move. But yeah, for that to all just happen in one day, in 1 week, that wasn't on anybody's radar a few weeks ago. And that's pretty big stuff. I mean, that job, I know they're looking for a smooth transition, but you don't always know how two different humans are going to do a job like that. I mean, so there's no reason to think there's going to be massive changes, but people should know with a new, as they do, with a new leader comes different thoughts, opinions, ways to do things. So that could mean changes at some point.
And of course, there's always probably going to be the curveball of just events that happen too. I'm sure early 2020, Bernard Childress had no idea what was about to happen there with the pandemic and then everything all the fallout from that. It was just darn near constant decision-making and news that was coming out for about the next 12 months after that. And they handled that pretty well, I think, all things considered. And now we are entering this kind of new era under Mark Reeves, who I got to know a little bit while I was the Robertson County reporter. My dealings with him have always been great. So looking forward to seeing what he does. But I definitely think sanctioning those sports that we talked about at the top is probably going to be one of the big challenges there. Of course, we touched a little bit last week on the official shortage, referees, umpires, all that. If that problem continues to get worse, that's probably something that's going to need to be addressed. They've already addressed some of that by moving some games around, including football games to Thursday night. Which, an aside here, Tyler, I'm totally pumped about the Thursday night games. If we can get a great game on Thursday night and then Friday night too, I think that's just going to help selfishly our coverage a little bit. But there's definitely going to be no shortage of challenges, and I'm sure Mark and his team will do the best they can to kind of deal with those as they come.
Yeah, I wonder if he works in this role for 5-6 more years if COVID doesn't happen.
That's a good question. I mean, he was quoted in the article that Maurice wrote. If you haven't read that, be sure to check that out at mainstreetpreps.com. Great story there kind of on his career and some reflection as well. But he was talking about how he was, on his phone every 15 minutes, checking his email every 5 minutes. And I guarantee you, during the pandemic, when literally everybody was reaching out to their office with questions and concerns, I mean, that had to have gotten even worse. So I definitely think in a lot of cases, not necessarily, I can't speak to this one specifically, but I think the pandemic has accelerated some retirements. My dad's a great example. He's retired as well from the National Weather Service as of a couple weeks ago. And I think working at home and just all the changes that have kind of happened in life accelerated his decision. It made it a little bit easier to walk away. And maybe that was the case here too. It's certainly everybody's kind of like realigned their priorities in the last couple of years. So certainly could have been a factor there.
He probably did. I bet he did 3 years worth of work in 2 years during all that. I mean, that job, a lot of jobs became really difficult or pretty crappy with the pandemic. And I bet that's one of them. I mean, because he just had so much more to do. I mean, so much had to be changed about how high school sports ran. And I mean, you're just talking about the layers of dynamics, it's just like a big onion. I mean, just so many layers. You start peeling eligibility back. Virtual schooling is now an issue. That was another thing that was established at that meeting last week that kind of got breezed over because it's just so incredibly boring. But, you can attend a virtual school, but you can't go play. If you attend a virtual school in Davidson County, for instance, you can't go play football at Oakland without transferring like a normal player. These are issues that didn't exist before the pandemic. So I wouldn't be surprised if Bernard just said, I think I'm going to call it a career. I think that was a good, strong finish. Got us through. Moving on. And congrats to him and Mark Reeves for, what seems like a good transition at this point.
Yep. Well said. And with that, we're going to call it a day here on Main Street Preps this week. Thanks for joining us, and be sure to stay tuned to the website all week, mainstreetpreps.com. We'll try to get some game coverage in there whenever this rain lets up, but in the meantime, we'll have you covered with all kinds of other stories and coverage. So be sure to check it out, and we'll see you next time on Main Street Preps this week.